And now, when did you meet Weissmandel for the?
Oh, I met Weissmandel after the
war.
war. After the war, he came after the war. He was a completely broken man. Completely broken man. He was staying in Williamsburg with a friend, and he was staying. He gave him a small room where he was staying. He was lying in bed all day, and he was hammering with his fists on the wall. He was crying, screaming. I visited him every day. And I visited him every day. I must say that at that time I myself had very hard times because I was a newcomer. I didn't speak English, and I was looking for work, and I went with my portfolio from one book publisher to the other. I could not communicate with them, and they had no patience for me. So I was in a very bad shape. And instead of going around looking for work, I went in the morning to Rabbi Weissmandel and was sitting with him the whole day. And he told me so many things, what he went through and what happened. And it came to me like a big wave, you know. It was overwhelming. I just couldn't grasp it, you know. He told me so many little incidents which occurred to him, like a man is fantasizing, a man is in fever. A man is in fever, he talks not coherently, he talks what comes out, what goes through his mind, and in a compulsion he breaks out, you know, and he says things which have no connection with each other. He told me, for instance, when he jumped out of the train, you know the story, he jumped out of the train.
The friend who was bringing him to Auschwitz.
To Auschwitz, yes.
His family.
He, what?
With the family.
With the family, yes. He begged his family, you see, he loosened a bar, an iron bar in the train, he loosened it, and he was able with all his might to move the door and open a little slit, room enough to squeeze oneself through it and jump out. And when the train went on a curve a little slower, there was an opportunity to jump. So he begged his family to come with him, but they didn't want to. So, can you imagine?
Who was the family?
His wife and his mother,
yes.
And 5 children.
5 children.
Yeah, 5 children.
New York Force, 17e.
In the train, there was, besides him, his family.
This was in October 44.
October
this
44,
was during the
yes.
second wave of the deportations from
right.
Slovakia.
Right.
To Auschwitz.
To Auschwitz, yes. He was in the train with his family, his wife and his mother, and 5 children.
5 children.
Yeah. 5 or 6? I think 5. He was desperately trying to do something.
And he knew exactly what was going on.
Of course he knew. Of course he knew. Of course he knew. You know that he was the man who took an affidavit with 2 escapees who came from Auschwitz and had a plan of the whole lager. The crematorium and everything, of course. He transmitted that information to the world.
And this was in April 1944.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And he was deported himself in October.
Right.
It's been 6 months later.
Yeah, right. So he tried to persuade his family to jump. You see, he loosened an iron bar in the compartment, in the train compartment, and he moved the iron door a little bit so that a slit was open which enabled one to jump. And he begged them to jump with him, and they were apparently resigned, and they didn't want to. So, and after a while, he jumped.
You jumped alone.
He jumped alone. And of course, it is up to us to imagine what went on in the mind of this man when he decided to leave his family in the train which was bringing them to their death and saving himself. You must understand, if you can, I cannot, what went on to make that decision. So he jumped.
You cannot.
I cannot, no. I cannot.
Did you talk with him about
Well,
this?
the man was, from that moment on, he could not forgive himself. Despite the fact that later on he was active, he even married again. But he never forgave himself what he did, because the thought was haunting him all his life. Well, he told me when after he jumped, he went through woods and to ways he didn't know his way, and it was a terrible danger, because there were Nazi patrols and gendarmes all around, and he told me that he finally came to a little parish. You know, a parish is a house where a priest lives.
Yes.
In a little village, and he knocked at the door. It was early in the morning, and a woman opened the door, and he was completely exhausted, and he begged her to give him a piece of bread. And apparently the woman realized that he was a Jew. The way she threw the bread at him, and he gobbled it. He immediately ate it, because he was starved. And finally he came to Bratislava, and he went into a bunker there. You know,
In a cave.
a bunker is not exactly a cave. It is some sort of a hiding place in a cellar or camouflaged place, you know. And there were many people crowded in the bunkers, you know. Anyway, when I met him after the war, as I told you before, he was living here in Williamsburg after he arrived here in a little room in a friend's apartment. He was lying in bed, crying and screaming at me, as if I were responsible. At the moment, you see, he saw in me a man who saved himself with his family, living here orderly, going after my business, a member of society, normal society, and there is he. So he saw in me the representative of the bourgeois, of the middle class man who didn't care what happened on the other across the ocean, you know. People who knew everything and went about their business. So that he saw in me. He screamed at me. He shook his fists at
Can
me.
you describe this screaming? What did he say exactly?
What did he say? He said to me, "What were you doing? What were you doing while we were there? You know what you were doing?" He didn't finish the sentence. What he meant was making children.
He meant it.
That's what he meant.
Yes.
He didn't say it. He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood what he meant. You see, I went to him every day, every day, the whole day. I was sitting there by his bed. A man was completely out of his mind, completely out of his mind. Very, very slowly he came to himself, very slowly.
For a long time? I mean, he was out of his mind?
Well, when I say out of his mind, I didn't mean he was insane.
Yes, I understand.
I meant he was emotionally
Yes.
upset, deeply upset emotionally. He accused the whole world. He accused us, he accused me, he accused everybody.
Yes, but this is I mean, he spent all these years during the war trying to save the Jews.
He was trying to save the Jews. Do you know that he halted the transportation for many, many months with the promise to deliver money.
Yes.
You see, he was a product of those old Jews who bribed their way through life, you know, who existed by bribing the Gentile. So he knew that there is no resistance, no physical resistance possible. There is no heroism possible, you see.
Yes.
You see, it is not like people say today we should have been fighting with them. We should have defended ourselves. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. It was a complete lethargy, a complete loss of initiative, which grabbed everybody. You know, this says in the Bible. I must mention that to you, whether you agree with it or not. It says in the Bible, in the 5th book of the Bible, there is, when Moses said to the Jews, if you are not going the way you should be, God will punish you. And among these words, there is one sentence which says, one man will drive 1,000, which means there will be just one man, and 1,000 people will be afraid of him. You know, in the concentration camp in Seret, there were thousands of people there, young men, old men, strong men, and there was a contingent of 10 SS men. So why they could have overpowered them, they could have thrown themselves on these men. They didn't do it. Why?
The extermination camps too.
Yes, but that was not an extermination camp. That was just what we call ein Sammellager. Seret, you know. They could have overpowered these 10 SS men and run away, and wherever their feet will lead them. But at the moment, there should have been the desire to do something, but the people were paralyzed, a complete paralysis, you know.